Okay, Dave, this is the retirement match of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, one of, if not the greatest professional wrestler of all time. And I remember before this match, you wrote a great piece in the Observer, and it led with a quote from I Did It My Way, So I Faced the Final Curtain by Frank Sinatra. And you really treated it like this is the retirement match, even if, there was the chance and the likelihood, in fact, in terms of wrestling, that Flair would wrestle again. You gave it that treatment of, okay, let's sort of pretend and let's look back at Ric Flair's career, and it was a fantastic piece. Did it feel like it was going to be a shoot retirement more than others back then that week?
Well, I mean, Rick had probably retired several times before.
That's what I mean.
Well, here's the thing. Vince was absolutely adamant about it. And at the time, I really, the relations with Rick and Vince were so good that I just didn't see mentally the idea that Rick would go anywhere else. As it turned out, Rick was gone from WWE within a couple of months of that match. I thought that Rick was there for life as an ambassador. Everything looked so big. They gave him the big retirement. The idea was, I remember all the way through, it's like, we're going to go through this big storyline, and you're going to be bigger than ever as a retired guy, and you're going to be a public relations guy, and you're going to make big appearances on Raw and be a bigger star than ever. You're going to be if you remember, Hulk Hogan was on the outs at this point with them. So it's like, Hulk's gone, and he's never coming back, that story. But that's what they thought. So you're Babe Ruth. You're going to be the guy. And it sounded great. When that match happened, I knew that Rick never wanted to retire, and if he had his way, he would probably be wrestling right now. But I thought that because Vince was going to hold to that stip, which, that there was a real good chance it would be his last match, and they weren't happy that it wasn't. But
right, because it wouldn't be, to be clear, that next match wouldn't be in the WWE ring. It would be over in TNA where, he had a falling out.
If I remember, the next run was the Australia tour.
With
and
Hogan.
TNA.
Yeah, with Hogan. Mm-hmm.
And then TNA, and then after TNA, God, I don't remember if did he ever wrestle a match after TNA?
No, he didn't do any matches in Ring of Honor, and he certainly didn't do any in WWE, and that was his two more stops along the way back to the company.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember, what his last match. It's funny because, the Shawn Michaels match is his last match, is very memorable.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't even know off the top of my head what his last match was. I don't know if it was...
It was the Foley match. It was when he had the Foley table match on Impact. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
That was it.
Okay, so him and Foley both had the same last match?
I believe so, yeah. Could be mistaken.
Well, because I know Foley was... I'm trying to remember if Foley did another one. I just remember that I talked to Foley 2 days after that match. And Foley knew going in it could be his last match. He didn't know if it would be. And then when it was over, it was kind of like he still didn't know if it was going to be his last match. But I remember him telling me, he's like, if this is my last match, I'm very happy. Because it could have been, it's at least something. And with Rick, that may have been Rick's last match too.
Now, what did you think of the execution here? They had this idea of Shawn sort of doing a mercy kill of Ric Flair, where he's just saying, come on, give me what you got left, but Flair's clearly on the ropes. Michael mouths the phrase, I love you, and then kicks him in the head and pins him. What did you think of the execution of this?
They tried to tell a compelling story. I think that they pretty much did. A lot of people really loved that match, I guess because, if you wanted to cry, it let you cry. I guess because it was Rick's last match, and I've seen so many Ric Flair matches, probably, maybe more matches with him than any wrestler ever. Yeah. I think over the course of the years, because so many years. I knew that on certain days he was able to turn it back. Like he had a Triple H match in Greensboro, which had a terrible finish, but it was a really good match. And I mean, it still boggles my mind that Ric Flair's retirement match in Greensboro, they had to do some wicked DQ because William Regal interfered to set up a Triple H William Regal 3-minute match on Raw, and Triple H, telling everyone, you got to see the big picture. You got to see the big picture. It's like the big picture is that Ric Flair should have beat you in his last match in Greensboro. but because the gimmick was Rick was beating everybody. He beat Randy Orton. He beat Randy Orton, but he never got a championship match. I think they could have given him a championship match. If you remember that whole retirement thing, this whole retirement thing was Steve Austin's idea. I don't know if you know that.
The retirement tour?
the retirement tour. I mean, I think they wanted a retirement. I don't know why Austin was involved or anything, but Steve Austin had this idea. Well, why don't we have a thing where Ric Flair is told that, and I think that with Austin's idea, it wasn't Vince McMahon forcing it on him. Like the next time next time you lose, you're gone, you're retired. It was going to be Ric Flair quest for the world championship. And
saying next match I lose, I'll retire out of personal pride, and that builds the drama for him winning every match.
In every match, and then he finally goes at WrestleMania for the world championship, and then he loses. I mean, that was the idea. Or and as it was presented to me, or he wins if it's going really good, and then but he still has the next match I lose, I retire, right? So as long as the momentum is strong, he's not retired, but there comes a time where he's going to lose that championship, and then, in fact, he does retire. And as that was laid out to me when this whole thing started, I thought, this is really great, because he's going to be, he's going to have 6 months of wins leading to a championship match. They completely botched it up. They started doing DQs. They started just not having him wrestle. I just remember that whole thing, and it just fell off the rails. But I mean, there were some, there were a few somewhat memorable moments in it, but the original idea was so much better than what they did. So there you go. And I mean, I think it could have been something if and the idea was Randy Orton as champion. So if Rick goes for the world title against let's just say Randy Orton, and wins it when everyone thinks he's going to lose it at that WrestleMania stage, that would be phenomenal. Or he loses it. And that would be good in another way.
So the dynamic clearly was that Flair was being told to retire. He did not want to retire.
Yeah, I mean that's what it was, and they were just trying to find a nice way to end his career. Yeah.
And then the next night on Raw, they do one of the more memorable segments in Raw history, where they bring out the cast of the original Four Horsemen, sort of surprise Flair in an emotional closing scene. Your memories of that send-off for the Nature Boy?
I personally think that was the greatest segment in the history of professional wrestling from any company ever. I remember telling some people, I remember that night I emailed someone who was in the ring, and I go, this was the greatest moment in the history of wrestling. And go, imagine being in the ring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just like, and it's not Rick. And I mean, and Rick the same way. And, I don't know how much people know, but Rick did not know who was coming out. And he did not know what was being done. I mean, that was like, that whole thing was like, I don't want to say unscripted because it was scripted by somebody, but it was unknown to anybody, except for those guys who were there. Nobody knew what was going to happen except for probably, Vince and a couple of people.
Yeah. Certainly not Rick, who sees all these, this is your life, kind of a parade of guys who have meant so much to him just suddenly show up without him even expecting it.
Yeah. Oh, it was just an incredible. I think it was the greatest moment in the history of Raw.
Oh.
And maybe wrestling, I mean, as far as non-match segment in the history of wrestling, maybe the best ever.
This WrestleMania also sees the WrestleMania debut of one CM Punk, who wins the Money in the Bank ladder match and goes on to cash in. Tell us about CM Punk's reputation coming into the WWE, and if you pegged him for achieving the heights that he did.
Well, the answer to that one is no. I did peg him to make the roster, and then I figured that the walls would come crumbling down on him. I thought that his confidence would rub people the wrong way because they would go, the whole Sin Cara thing. I guess to give the example that he would come in, and because he knew he was good, and they would go, you were good in Ring of Honor, and that means nothing here. That they would just go, he thinks he's good and he's a minor leaguer, and it would just destroy him. He'd be, everybody be out to get him. And that probably wasn't far from the truth, but he survived it because at the end of the day, the guy was a fantastic talker and still is. And he won the Money in the Bank. He won the championship. He wasn't really treated as champion. Like when he was champion the first time, it was very much he was, it wasn't like he was the focal point of the company. He had a belt, and the belt actually meant less than usual. So it was almost like the win as champion didn't really count the first time in some ways. But, he again, CM Punk really made himself in 2011, and then
Well, we'll certainly talk about
yeah,
him more in weeks to come. I should insert a quick correction here. This was sort of CM Punk's first moment at WrestleMania. He actually debuted the year before in the Money in the Bank ladder match that year in 2007. Came back to win this year. Well, we can't talk about this WrestleMania, Dave, without talking about Floyd Money Mayweather, who the WWE gathered together, scrounged together substantial resources to bring in to work with the Big Show in a straight pro wrestling match. Floyd taking some bumps, doing a traditional match, going over. Why did they sign Floyd? How much did they pay him? What was the idea?
I think the money ended up being about $2 million, although they said $20 million.
Boy.
But I mean, as far as the idea was a tag team match, and it was I think it was
Floyd
Shane
and Ray versus Big Show and Shane.
Later. Originally, it was Oscar De La Hoya and Ray.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Against Shane and Floyd.
That's right.
And then Oscar turned it down because that was the original idea was for Floyd to be the heel, because Oscar and Floyd had just done the boxing match that was the biggest pay-per-view of all time. Mm-hmm. So, that was they just done the biggest pay-per-view of all time by leaps and bounds. They'd done those specials on HBO that everybody watched. They were household names, and they just and whatever. Oscar did not want to do pro wrestling, so he's out of the question. So then it becomes Floyd and Ray against Big Show and Shane, and then Ray tears his bicep, I think, right before the program starts. So Floyd's supposed to be a babyface, and even with Ray, the idea is that Ray makes him a babyface. The crowd is completely hating Floyd throughout this whole thing, and then Ray gets hurt right away, so Ray's out of the question. So they go with the singles match, and they try to push Floyd as a babyface. Now the first TV, as I recall, it's L.A., right? Mm-hmm. Or one of the first TVs. So he's booed out of the place, and they're going, well, Oscar De La Hoya is from L.A. Of course he's booed. So the next week they go to Vegas. Okay, this is when we're really going to kick it off. He's going to be in Vegas, his hometown, and they all boo him. So then it's like, well, I guess Big Show's the babyface. Mm-hmm. So they flip flop on the program, and they go with Floyd as the heel and Big Show as the babyface. And I mean, to their credit, for a guy, I mean, you had a lot of things going against you. You had a heel who's 1/3 the size of your babyface, which is difficult. You have a heel who has never done a match in WrestleMania, which is mind-boggling. And the Big Show, for as talented as he is, and he is talented, he's not exactly the guy I would put to carry a novice to a match at WrestleMania. Right. But I mean, Floyd was fantastic through the whole build. Floyd's just it's no joke why that guy can draw. He was great all the way through as a heel, and I don't really think, honestly, like. If no one will ever be able to prove this. I mean, they did. I think it was 1,041,000 buys, I think was the number. Mm-hmm. I don't know that Floyd added that much, because I really think Rick's retirement was going to be really big, plus the rest of the card that they had. I really think that they were probably going to do in that number anyway. So I don't think he really added too much. I mean, he gave them some publicity that they wouldn't have gotten, some talk show stuff late that probably helped a little bit. But and I know they advertised the whole show around Floyd, especially mainstream. But I'm still not sure that he delivered like the kind of added buys that like The Rock and Donald Trump delivered. I just don't buy that he did.
Do you think it hurt Show to not go over in this match, or to? I shouldn't put it that way. I wouldn't expect Mayweather to job, but to be pinned clean by Floyd Mayweather.
Well, it's a Big Show. You know what I mean? I mean, he was already past that level to where it really mattered. I mean, this was more of a revitalization of him as opposed to, if they took somebody who was super, super, super hot heel that they, like let's say it was Rusev this year, and they brought him to Floyd, and then Floyd beats him. I would say that was probably not a good idea. With Big Show, I don't really know that it mattered. I mean, it got him in the spotlight. He lost. Maybe that was part of the deal with Floyd that probably was. I know, I don't know if you know the story, but Mike Tyson was furious.
Was furious that Floyd won?
Oh, furious.
Really?
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely furious. Because Mike Tyson, loves pro wrestling and loves boxing, and he feels that, like, if Mike went in there he if Mike Tyson would have gone in there and he'd been in that match, he would have demanded to lose because his feeling was that it's unfair for a novice to beat a guy in his own sport because he doesn't believe that anyone would have walked in boxing to beat him. Right. But if he goes in somebody else's sport, if it was real, it's like the whole Mike Tyson, Randy Couture argument from years and years and years ago, where people go, oh, if it was, Mike Tyson would knock out, he'd destroy Randy Couture. And Mike Tyson was always like, no, I mean, it's not my sport. It's his sport. Of course I would.
Well, it's a nice thing to say, Mike, but go ahead and do it. Why didn't you ever get in there and do the JOB?
Oh, Mike?
Yeah.
They never, the one time they did I guess they never came to him with the money after they offered him $3.5 million the one time. I think they never offered him again. I mean, he did do that one tag match, if you remember, on Raw, which blew my mind. It's like Mike Tyson's doing a pro wrestling match with no build, and he probably got paid like $10,000 for it or something, or $20,000, and it's just like, if you like advertised Mike Tyson doing a pro wrestling match for 6 months for WrestleMania, I mean, it wouldn't mean as much now. I mean, when he did it, but it still mean more than like Raw with no build. It's so friggin' insane.